Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Dynamics GP coffee break with focus on Excel reports. My name is Tess, and I'm the facilitator today. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the questions area in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll answer questions at the end. The session will be recorded and posted on our blog. And now I'd like to introduce our presenter today, Don McNulty, who's a solutions architect on our Dynamics GP team at Encore. Don, I'll pass it over to you.
All right, well, thanks. And well, good morning all. All right, so first off, it's Excel reports and kind of what are they and how do you use them inside GP? We all know about smart lists. We talked about smart lists in the last seminar and the seminar before, and I'll be using some of that to build on today. The big thing about Excel reports is its speed. The speed of getting the data out is paramount as to why you'd be moving to Excel reports. Once the Excel, if you're running a smart list all the time that you run and then you wait for and you go get a cup of coffee and come back, then you run it out to Excel and go get the donut to go with the coffee, then you need to look at Excel reports, because Excel reports will bring that data out to you almost instantaneously. It'll do about 50 to 100,000 records in less than a minute. So it's very, very quick and very, very stable in that regard. So how do you access it? So first thing is, how do we get access to it? So there's a few things that we need to talk about. One is that the Excel reports do not use the Great Plains security system. They use Windows authentication, which means that your IT department and your SQL people have to provide access to these reports, and not to the reports, but to the data on the SQL level for the individual users. So mine has been set up such that I have that, so I'll be able to run it today. You can access them directly from within GP. So if I'm in GP, I can go into a Excel reports tab on my navigation pane. It will bring up a list of reports. I can hit one of those and it will open up the report for me. That's option number one. Option two is that you can access it just with a Windows Explorer. You can go out to a location with an Excel file. Once the Excel file has been saved there, you can open up the Excel file. It will automatically go and get the data from GP. The big thing about it is the two pieces are the security issue is one, you have to have security, and secondly is that it does not require a Great Plains license to run an Excel report, which means that if I grab it using Windows, I never log into GP, so I never use a user license. As a result, I can provide these Excel reports to people in your organization that do not ordinarily have access to GP data. The ones that come to you all the time and ask you for, oh, I need this, can you please run this spreadsheet for me and get this spreadsheet data for me today? And you run the report, you take 5 or 10 minutes to run the report, you export it out to Excel, you email them a copy of the Excel form. You could provide them, if they ask for that same report once a week or once a month, you could provide them an Excel report. They could open it up anytime they wanted to. It would automatically refresh if the security was set correctly, and they would be able to run their own data so that they wouldn't bother you at the end of the month when you're busy doing your month end. So that's the big thing about Excel reports. We'll then be talking about how we add fields to existing Excel reports, and how we add single tables, and how we can add additional tables as well. And then also we'll talk about some views and things like that. It gets a little technical on the modifying them. So that's the one area where people sometimes, you can ask us for assistance. Encore is more than willing to give you a hand writing these Excel reports once you figure out what you want from a smart list point of view. And then how do we put queries on them? I'll be running them without queries today, but for instance, the GL transaction default will bring out every single GL transaction ever done in your system. Some of you on the call today may have been running GP since the 1990s. You may have millions and millions and millions of transactions. And in actual fact, what you really want is just the last 2 years, or the last 3 years, or the last 5 years. I will show you how to add that using the where clause in a SQL where clause inside Excel. Performance-wise, what we want to talk about today is how fast it is. Because if you, I'll show you in SmartList how fast it is, and then I'll show you in Excel how fast it is, and you can see for yourself with the same database how much quicker one is over the other. The bigger the database, the more speed improvement that you get, okay? So without anything else, I'm going to go on to my demo. All right, so what we have here is we have a smart list. This smart list, called GL Transactions, was written using the designer, but basically what it has is standard GL entries. And it has journal entry number 1 from 2023 all the way through to now I've only got 1,000 transactions here. There's actually 23,000 transactions in my database. So I'm only bringing out 1,000. So if I was to refresh this right now, what would happen is it would start to paint like this, and you can see it count down the side here. And now we have to wait for it to finish in order for us to send the 1,000 records out. As we merrily go along, we wait, and there's about 1,000 records. And then to bring that to Excel, we hit the Excel button, and it pops out and it counts backwards to 0. This is something that you, as people who run GP, do this all the time. We send data, we get it in SmartList, we go, this is the data I want, I'm going to send it all out, and then I sit here and I wait for it. I'm just going to hit stop because I'm not going to wait for it, and it will bring up 579 rows of data. So there's the 579 rows of data, okay? So there it is there, that's nice, it's great. We've got 425 rows is how many I actually sent out, so I have the 579 left, so 575 left. So there it is there. So that's pretty standard. That's standard GP from that point of view. And I'm just going to close this right now in Excel. So now, when I look at a report inside here, and I'll come back to this report. When I go to here and I look at my account transactions, let me just make sure I've got, I must have it open. Okay. So inside here, if I click on this, if I go into here, so underneath financial, I click on Excel reports and it brings up this list of reports here. I go down to here and I go into account transactions default. Like this, I grab the one that says report here. And when I double click it, it opens up Excel, 6 columns, and populates. What you just saw was it refreshing itself for 24,000 rows. So when we talk about a speed differential, you saw how long it took me to get 500 rows out. That's how long it takes me to get 23,000 rows out. So we're going to start with this because this is a good starting point. This is the default one out of the box, and there is no limitations on it. So this is now data that is directly connected to GP. So if I go up to the very top, and you go end up, if I go into here in my Excel file and I go like this, and I delete the first 37 rows, like so, they're gone. So they're gone from my Excel spreadsheet. It does not do anything to your GP database. And if I go back to my data button here, I have a refresh all. And when I click the refresh all, there it is, it's finished. It just read the 23,000 records again. And you'll notice that the 37 records are back again. So what will happen is that you can do, and then you can do whatever you want with this. You can start to write pivot tables and things like that against it so that you can see what's going on. So then you go, well, this is nice. This is great. This is a default one. I need more information. And I need more information in order to make this useful. So one of the things that I'd like to see is when I go back to my GP, is I want to see the, I want to see the description. I want to see the debit, the credit amount. I want the batch number. I've got one. Description, I've got a originating debit, originating credit, the reference, and then some master ID information. That's your vendors and your customers, and then some currency because if this isn't in, if this is all in US, but I have some Canadian and some Australian dollars in here. So I'm looking at this going, I would like all this data, but I want it this fast. I don't want to have to wait for this to count up to 22,000 because that's like watching paint dry. So what we do is we come into here, we can go to queries and connections, and there's a couple of ways of doing it. The simple way to add a single field is you click on, you go up to queries and connections, it opens up this. Now it may open up here, or it may be a drop down depending on what version of Excel. This is Office 365, so this is the most current version. When I get to the connection side, when I open it up, I get a box that looks like this. Now ordinarily the box, when it first opens up, looks like that. So what I do first is, the first thing I do is I make it bigger. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the definition here, and this is what is defining what shows up on my page. Okay? So on the connection string, we don't have to do anything. The connection string is our connection into the GP database. Okay, saying I am looking at, in this case, my data source. That's my server name, and that is my database name. Okay? So then down here, this is a list of all of the fields that are part of the query. Those are the 6 fields that you see behind. You'll see journal entry, series, transaction date, account number, etc., account description, debit and credit amount. Okay, so those are the fields, and they're coming from the account transactions default, which is a view that Microsoft wrote for you as part of GP. It is built into GP. So I can now go into this view and I can add any field from that view that I wish. Those field names, because you need to know the field name is precisely, are listed right here. So what I'm going to do is the one I'm going to add manually is I'm going to add reference. So to add reference, what I do is I go down to the bottom of the list here, in between, before the from, and we put in an open bracket and we type in reference and we close the bracket. Now, one thing we need is we need a comma at the end of that line. This, for those of you who understand SQL, this is SQL. This is just a straight SQL query. Okay, so from here, I go like that. I'm saying that's fine. I click OK. It's going to tell me it's no longer identical to the original one, and we go, that's fine. I'm going to just store it inside this workbook. Now I've got a reference. I've got the 26,000 references all the way down. Done. I can then also, inside these tables, if I said, oh, I want the net, I can go like this, and I can go equals the debit minus the credit. There. Also 26,000 rows automatically done. There we are. And we can go like this and we can make it look quite nice. We'll go to home, we'll hit the comma here and make it just so it looks a little easier to read. So this is your debit. Now if I add up this column, right? If I had the sum of all my active posting accounts will be 0. This one says 4,120,000. And the reason for that is that I have unit accounts. So this is pulling out unit accounts as well as standard accounts. So I could go down and I could then filter this to get rid of all my unit accounts if I wanted to. So this gives me a list of all of my GL codes. So now I have every single transaction, and now I can write a pivot table against it that would allow me to look at specific GL codes or balances or months or periods or whatever you need. Now, so that's option number 1. So and then if I want to change it again, I just double click on this. I go back to my definition and I can come down to here and I can go comma, and then I can put in another field. History year happens to be a field. Now these field names have to be identical to what's in the file. And when we go OK, it adds the history year. Okay, and in this case, we want this to go back to general 2024. So that is your history year. So if it was a historical year, it will have a year filled in. If you wanted to see the open year, you could add that just by adding open year at the end. And those fields, so that you understand where they come from, is if I go into columns and I go add, let me just go cancel. Let me open up the regular transaction one, count transaction default. There's the 6 columns, and all I did was go columns, add, and I've got my reference. These are all the fields that are available to you. I added my reference, and I added history year. And if I wanted to, I could add open year, like so. You go, okay, there it is there, history year, open year are there. And so there's 2027. There's the history year and there's some history year. I've got, my data is not complete, but that's okay. So there we are. So that's basically, and so all I've done here by going like this is I've just added those 2 at the bottom, just like I added those columns. I have to type them exactly as they are inside the smart list in order for it to look from the account transactions. So that's the easy way to fix the ones that are currently out of the box. Once you've done that, we can now save this. So you go File, you go Save As. Do not save it on top of the original. It will overwrite it, and then you will not have the original in case you break it. Always save it as something else. So then you go Save As, and I'm going to go into here, and I'm going to save it in exactly the same spot, and I'm going to call this Seminar. There we are there, and we hit Save. Now, your Excel reports will be in a folder that looks something like this. Either under, it'll be under a / something, probably under your server name, followed by a Dynamics database, followed by Excel reports, followed by reports, something to this effect. This is where it was originally. If I put it back in exactly the same space and I go Save, so now I've saved it. If I go back to my GP and I go to this page here and I refresh it, which is click off of it and click onto it. When it loads this, that Excel report Seminar will show up on this list now. If it's in that specific location where it was originally deployed, it will show up on this list. If you store it someplace else, i.e. on a personal drive or on a shared accounting folder or on a finance folder or wherever you wish on your network, it will not be there. It won't be on this list, so you won't be able to get at it from GP, but you'll be able to get at it from your standard folder within Excel. Okay? And this one takes a bit. Okay. So what I've done is I did another one inside here, and I just want to talk about it now, is to talk a bit about some pivot tables. So inside here, I've added a few things. I've added reference, originating amounts, as well as some stuff, as well as some currency. So the idea behind this is that once I've got this here, count transactions Excel reports, I can write a pivot table that looks like this. It's got the originating, there's the currencies and things like that. And if I don't want to see that account, I can turn that account on. I can turn on 1120. I can turn on multiple accounts using the control. So these are the types of things that you can do. So you can see your different balances. Now these balances are for all of these periods. Now, the problem that we've got is that if you've got millions and millions of records, your data, your Excel database or Excel file is going to become very, very, very large. And you don't need that most of the time. You're not looking at having, so inside here, I still have that 25,000 records, 23,692 records. But if I say, okay, what I really want to do is I want to show only the transactions between that are 2026 and 2027. My databases are 2027 is live, 2026 is history. So last year's data was 2026. this year's date is 2027. So if I want to show only that data, when we click back on the queries and the properties, this is where we talk about the where clause. So what happens here is we go to definition, and at the bottom here, we can come into here and we can just type in, at the end, we type in where. And what we need to have is we have to look up here, we need the transaction date. So we need this, Control C, Control V, where the transaction date between, and then we type in two dates. Dates in single quotes, we go quote 01/01/26, quote, put in the word and, quote 12/31/27, quote. Now when I go okay, it's finished. But now when I go like this and I go end down, I now only have 10,334 records. So I have the amount of records because I've only got like 4 years worth of data. But in your case, it could be that you went from 10 million records down to a more manageable couple 100,000. Now, this will do a couple 100,000 records without blinking. So it's very powerful from that point of view, and that's why we like to use it. So if I go back to my GP, and I go in here, you'll see there's the account transaction seminar. The little tildes in front of these are because the files themselves are open. That means that I have them open already from within here. So that's where they are. So they've got a usage on them. You can still run them again. It just tells you that I can't open it twice on the same machine. But somebody else could open this same Excel report. But when you save it, it's whether you save on top of it or not. When you save these reports, if you've got your pivot tables, and we go rename this and we call this account lookup. So now when I go into my pivot table, we all know how to refresh a pivot table. There's the pivot table been refreshed. And now when I just look at July 2027, I've got no data. But if I go look at January and I take the first quarter, there's my numbers for the first quarter of 2026. Okay, so I could then say I want to see what's in April, that's what's in March, and it will work according, and it picks up these numbers. So you can do what you need to do here, and you can create this pivot table, and once you've created it, every time you open up this spreadsheet, it refreshes it. So you don't have to worry about it. It refreshes the data in the back based upon what I've got in my connection string. So if I put in my dates, for instance, okay, I want everything greater than 2025 or anything greater than 2020 would be a good one for a lot of people here. That would then give us 2020 data, 2021 data, 2022 data. If you're on a non-fiscal year end or a non-calendar fiscal year end, you could then specify from the start of a fiscal period to the end of a fiscal period as part of your date range. So the where clause is very powerful that you can do that kind of thing. You could also go down to the account level, so you could see all the transactions you ever did under a specific account if that's what you wanted. Ordinarily, what you would do is dump the whole thing out and then filter it in the pivot table or filter it using Excel by saying, I only want to see transactions for 1100. There we are, there's the two transactions. And you can do this filter type of filter anytime you want. That's just a standard Excel filter. And there's your 10,000 records back again. So very quick, very easy to use. All right. Okay. The last thing I wanted to show very quickly is that if I go into here and I use one that I've gotten, this is came from, so if I click on this here, oops. So if I click on my one that I've written, if I've written this from Smart List Designer from scratch, which is what I've done here, if I go modify on it, what you can do is you can execute the query inside here. It executes the query. You go, this is what I want. When I hit the T-SQL, I can grab this here and go copy. And then I can go out to my, let me just switch windows to my seminar one here. With that copy in mind, I can go to my definition here. I can grab this whole thing here and go Control V. And by doing this, I now go OK. There is that same thing all back again. Done. Okay, and that's a fast way of doing it once you've built it in the Smart List Builder. Or Smart List Builder will do that, give you that SQL script, as does the Smart List Designer. And then you can copy and paste it. So basically, you produce it using the GUI interface inside GP that we talked about last time out, which was the Smart List Designer. You click on the SQL part, and then you can copy and paste it directly into an Excel report. It will then change the data into whatever I need. So I can do that, and then I can save it as a different piece inside here. And I'm just going to close this, and I'm going to go don't save because I don't want to save that. Now, when I go back to GP, so that's what, and then I can add, so each of these sales have got sales reports that show up like this. I use the GL because I've got the most data in the GL. But you could use this against any smart list. So every smart list, every default smart list is already available to you inside there. When you look inside your Dyn data, and we go Dyn data, and we go Excel reports, and 218, each company is here. We go sales. There's a list of all of the different reports. And if I grab my customer default report, it'll open up the customer default. This is using non-GP. There it is there. And then I've got the same ability to add things like current balance and things like that. All default smart lists are listed as Excel reports automatically out of the box. They're there. All you have to do is open them up. Okay. Now, it's a lot to cover in a quick time. So, any questions?
Thanks, Don. Yes, if anyone has any questions, you can enter them into the control panel. We do have one so far, Don, and it is there a way to get debits and credits to default to 2 decimal places and a comma?
To get, there is a setting, coming out in Excel, yes, you just format the cell, the column. Once you formatted it once, it never needs to be reformatted. So the formatting that I did would be permanent. Once I save that file, it would automatically remember that. Coming out of Smart List, there is a setting that you can put into your DEX INI that will do that, but it means that your Smart List will run about 30 to 45% slower than it does already. Okay? That's why they went to the 4 decimals, because that 4 decimals is how it's actually physically stored in SQL. And by not reformatting each record as it reads it, it speeds the system up by about 40%, which is why most people leave it and then just format it once you get it into Excel.
Sounds good. Thanks, Don. Yes, so there's a question if this recording will be available for viewing later. Yes, it will be. We'll be sending out a link, and it will also be available on our blog, but you'll get a link to the recording. The next question, Don, is can you restate the security permissions required to access this?
You need to have security on your SQL side. You need to have read access into each of the data tables that you may be accessing or the data views. Ordinarily, there are a bunch of report style roles that are attached inside GP automatically. If the person is granted rights to the report style roles, they'll be able to run the Excel reports. There are I think there's 15 against the company and about 7 against the Dynamics database itself for the core data. You need to have read access as an individual or as a group. Ordinarily, we use a group. From a security point of view, we tend to create a group called Excel reporters. Those Excel reporters, we put people in that group, then we assign the group at the SQL level, so we only have to do it once instead of every time we hire a new person.
Thanks, Don. The next question is, how would I write the date greater than to filter the list in the connections properties command text?
Just use the where transaction date with the greater than sign and then put in a date. Remember that greater than does not include the date that you put there. So if I put in 01/01/21, I will get everything from January 2nd onward. So you need to be 1 day behind. Unless you put you could use the greater than or equal to sign as well if you wish.
Sounds great. Those are all the questions that have come in. So thank you, Don. And we do have some upcoming webinars. I'll let Don talk about the one happening next week.
So next week we kind of added an extra webinar next week in between on the reporting, and that's about the protocol changes. This has to do with the way that your email is being sent out from Great Plains as to whether you're sending documents by email, sales orders, invoices, remittance advices, and statements, as well as whether or not you use workflow with email as well. They will be breaking in October 2022 if they're not already broken now, between now and then, if you're running a version of GP lower than 18.3. So if you're running 18.3 or 18.4, you'll be fine. If you're not running those versions, you need to think about what different ways of working around the issue. It has to do with a modern and basic authentication protocol from the TLS side. Microsoft has implemented this. They are rolling it out to all their Office 365 clients between now and October the 22nd. October 2022. Sorry, not October 22nd, but October 2022. So we'll be talking about the impact and going in detail as to how we can, some things that we can do and what we need to look at between now and the end of October. That'll be next Thursday, I believe it is not Tess?
Yes, that's correct. And then beyond that, we have 2 more coffee breaks scheduled for May and June. So I have put the events link in the chat function if anyone would like to register for those webinars. I also added a link where you can set your email preferences and opt into our monthly and quarterly emails so that you can stay in the know about upcoming events and have our blog articles and see that straight to your inbox. So thank you, Don, and for the information today, and thank you to everyone for joining us, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.